is Radio Bath.
And welcome back to Brave Business Conversations. We are in our second segment. We've got John Freeman, a professional stress buster. Hey, John, welcome to the studio.
Hi. Hello, everybody.
I love that stress busting thing. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into it.
How did I get into it? I got very, very stressed.
There you go.
For a very long time. The short answer to this is I was 28 years old. I discovered there was a difference between a positive and a negative mental attitude. I set about making a huge success of myself, and what I did instead was cause a lot of stress for myself. And at its worst, in the late 90s, I was the original white van man. So I was driving around, shaking my fist out the window, causing accidents everywhere, undervaluing myself, working way too hard, never having a break, never stopping for anything. If anything slowed me down or stopped me, I would lose my temper and I would shout and swear, and I was doing that 5 or 6 times a day. I would scratch my legs until they bled because I was so tense, and it was just horrible, horrible, horrible. I was screaming around thinking, I'm all right, not letting anyone help me, and then crying myself to sleep every night, hoping and praying somebody would reach out a hand and rescue me.
That was the worst of times. And then how did you get out?
I finally had a big row with my brother over nothing, and I went home and I realised I had to relax, and I got a felt tip pen and wrote on my bedroom wall, relax, relax, relax. And that was the first step, and I stopped drinking the 9 or 10 cups of coffee every day I was drinking, and I got into hypnotherapy, and I became a hypnotherapist.
Yeah, it's interesting when you learn all that stuff, how it really applies to you first before you apply it to clients.
You've got to, haven't you?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting what the topic that you chose was to thrive. It's not just to survive stress. It's not just to bust out stress, but how do you thrive? How do you almost like rediscover yourself, I guess? Yeah.
Well, I find a lot of people, when they talk about stress, I've got a real bug up my bottom about stress and the way people talk about it. And everybody wants to help you cope with your relationship, or help you cope with the problems at work, or help you cope with it and that. And I think we need to stop trying to cope all the time. And if we come back to us, I talk about we've got to come home and we've got to look after our stress levels. And we all have the natural ability to cope with everything and anything and cope well. So when we focus on us and we focus on how we feel, and it's always about the feelings, when we focus on that, our problems simply melt away by themselves. And so, therefore, we begin to thrive in any environment.
Yeah, when you start with yourself and understanding.
We've got to start with us.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. A lot of people stress out over the things they can't control, and they blame the things they can't control. That doesn't really end up anywhere.
I call that the stress paradox. And the moment we can get our head around the stress paradox, in that everybody thinks when you take all of that away, my stress will go away too. And the trouble is that will never go away. You know, we've got COVID now. What's it going to be next year? What's it going to be the year after? Life is going to throw things at us.
Yeah.
And some of it's unexpected, some of it's expected. But there's always stuff we have to cope with. And if we blame all that for how we feel, then we are always going to be stressed. We're always going to be anxious.
And just to let you know, John, you are my last show of the year.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, you're my last hour slot, last show of the year. And the reason I've called you in and kind of squeezed this moment with you is because I want people to flush it all out, you know, whatever. Start out 2022 with some modified mindset or a new perspective. And I think this is a proper topic. I want to dig a little bit more about John and his concept about stress, and also your personal experience of helping others as well as helping yourself on how to thrive under stress. Right after this.
Across Bath, Bradford-on-Avon and Trowbridge, this is Radio Bath.
We're back with Brave Business Conversations, and let's flush out our year full of negativity, uncertainty. Let's talk to John a little bit about stress busting. First tip about stress busting. What do you say, John?
Start with you.
Yeah.
Start deciding with who you want to be. Stop thinking about what is and how anxious you are and how stressed you are. What do you want? And people find that very difficult because they don't know how they're going to do that. But
don't start with the how then.
Yeah, we've got to decide on what first. The rest is easy, one step at a time, and we start moving down that direction. But we've got to decide what we want. So we're at the end of the year. Who do you want to be in 2022? What kind of a person do you want to be? Do you want to be calm, relaxed, confident? You've got to think about these things. You've got to make that choice.
But I find people, they say, yeah, I want to be this and that. But they go back to their old habits after.
And that's what we've
2
got to
weeks.
do is start then, once we've made the decision, start stacking positive habits. Now, for me, when I work, it's my guided meditations. They're not woo-woo. They're very feet on the ground, but they're exceedingly powerful. I'm very empathic, very intuitive, and they touch you at the deepest level. So when I make my guided meditations, I'm talking to you, I'm talking to your subconscious, I'm talking to the past you, I'm talking to the future you. None of it matters. All you have to do is sit there, lie there, put your headphones on, hit the play button. You don't have to do anything.
And why does that work? Just for listeners who may not know what guided meditations are and why they work, can you tell us more about it?
So they're kind of mixture from my old hypnotherapy days, and they're about visualization. And what they do is create feelings within you, and they create good feelings within you. So it's a reset. So every time you listen, you're reminding your subconscious, this is how I want to feel.
And why does generating those kinds of feelings, how is that effective?
Well, if you think about when we're stressed and when we're anxious and all we're thinking about is everything that's wrong and how bad we feel, we're creating negative feelings. But positive feelings are so much more powerful. But we have to tap into them and remind ourselves. So we're giving ourselves a new point of reference. So every time we listen, and I talk about thrice a day, so 3 times a day, 10 minutes each, as your first positive habit, leading you towards where you want to go. So every time you listen, you're reminding your whole being, your subconscious, this is how I want to feel. And your subconscious is going to say, oh, that's how you want to feel. I'll start working on that. And once you get your subconscious on side, everything is possible.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I do a bit of coaching myself. And it's interesting when you get into your negative spiral, right? And you start with one negative thought. And then it almost like, I always think that your mind is just your servant. You tell it how to think. If you start with a negative one, its job then is to find the next negative thing and the next negative thing. And before you know it, your servant has done a very good job for you, which is now it's clouded you.
Doing exactly what it's designed to do.
But vice versa, if you did that with a positive thing, it says, oh, I love what you said. Oh, you want me to feel that way. Let me see how I can do that.
Yeah, let's see what we can do.
Yeah.
And that's just the first positive habit. And then from there, you get, what happens is as you begin to calm and break the stress cycle, you get vital seconds of consideration before you think, before you talk, before you act. And you can start to decide, what is the long-term outcome I want here? Instead of just reacting in a stressed out way all the time, you start to get to choose. And that gives you control over your life. So then you can start thinking of more positive habits. You can start practicing gratitude. You can start taking breaks more. Because what happens is the more you go down this road, the more you notice how you've been creating the stress for yourself. Because we create stress ourselves.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's almost like that first click of self-awareness. It's like you do realize, when you start with yourself, you do realize you create everything that you're feeling. Yeah. And the next time you, let's say, accidentally say something negative, that what you said, those little minutiae of a moment that just says, oh, do I want to continue doing this? Or do I just want to change the subject?
And then we remember, what was that choice I made?
Yeah.
Who do I want to be? That's the choices that's going to guide me. That's my targeting system. And I'm just going to keep heading down that road.
As you're speaking like this, I just realized, people need to realize just how powerful they are, at least over themselves. They are so powerful. And I do catch myself, as I was working on myself as well over the number of years that I've been doing this. It's just, you do catch yourself and say, oh, I'm going down this little
look what I'm doing again. And then what's really important there is don't beat yourself up. Don't give yourself a hard time. That's the enemy of all good things, isn't it? Just be kind to yourself and notice, smile, switch your direction. What do I want? Who do I want to be?
I can't imagine, you're this positive, you listeners, you're not here in the studio with me. I'm seeing a very positive man in front of me, and I'm thinking about him waving his fist out in the van. What was it, if I could get a little bit personal, what was it? What was your mentality when you were in that negative cycle?
I didn't talk about what was happening before that 28 years old, where I lost my father very young when I was 6. Mum wasn't there when I needed her. She wasn't provided for. She had to go to work. So I grew up very anxious, very lonely. I had a lot of depression, constant broken heart. I just did everything possible to build a very, very negative self-esteem. So when I then discovered there was a difference between a positive and negative attitude, I said, it's great, I'm going to be a success. What I really did was then bang up against all that old negativity and how I felt about myself. So I had no self-belief. I was trying to run a business and be a success, but I had no belief in how good I was. So I would work too hard and charge too little and think I had to run and rush all day long to prove myself to everybody. And there was no effective planning, no asking for help. If I could do it wrong, I did it wrong. Is every choice I made was bad for me.
Why do people not ask for help? Coming from your experience,
Yeah,
and your work with clients.
that's a good question, isn't it? I couldn't even be in a room with successful people. I felt so low about myself that and you think, if I ask for help, they're going to know how bad I am.
So let's
So we're
build
trying-
up that shield.
The stress is such a big proving that I'm all right, I don't need any help, I'm okay. And of course that's going against the reality of the situation, in that what I really wanted to do was crawl up under the desk and cry my eyes out. But if you don't show anybody that, then nobody can help you. And really, my clients, the biggest step they take is saying, hey, John, I need help. After that, the rest is easy.
Yeah.
Really, it's getting to a point where you can say, I need help.
Yeah, that awareness and that acceptance that I can't do this by
I think there's a
myself.
lot of shame, isn't there, attached to I'm not coping.
And I think that's the old definition of success and achievers and everything, that you've got it all together.
Drive,
Yeah.
drive.
Yeah, exactly. You got to work really hard.
Push hard. Yeah.
Is that just our generation, or do you find that in
I
younger
think it's
people as well?
always been like that, hasn't it? And to a certain extent, it always will be. I remember people used to say to me, when I first qualified as a stress management counsellor in 2000, and people used to say, oh, don't take away my stress, I need that, I couldn't cope with it. And it's such a wrong belief.
I work well under pressure.
Yeah, I work well under pressure. I need my stress.
Yeah, well, lots of good insight coming up with Brave Business Conversations when we return with John Freeman after this. Welcome back to Brave Business Conversations. We're still with John Freeman, the Stress Buster. I love that title. You know that.
It's great, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's amazing when we look at what's happened over the last 12 months or maybe 24 months, What do you see out there with your clients and the people you hang out with? How have people tried to cope with stress? What's been some of the best practices? What's been some of the challenges?
Yeah, I don't think people are coping with stress. I don't think people understand stress enough. I think there's too many misconceptions about stress.
Tell us one of them, or a couple of them. Go for it.
People think that when all that stuff out there goes away, then their stress will go away as well. That's the stress paradox. And we've got to stop blaming everything else. I know COVID's tough. And if it wasn't for COVID, we'd have something else, or something else, or something else. Life's always going to be throwing things at us. And our job is to become more resilient and better able to deal with all of that. And all the time we spend trying to cope with things is time we could be spending on dissipating the stress chemicals. And I think that has to be our number one choice in everything we do, in every choice we make, every decision we make through our lives, if we can just every problem that presents itself to us, what is the least stressful option? What is going to dissipate my stress chemicals? What's going to make the stress chemicals more powerful? And if we keep making the right decision, then our stress levels are going to come down. We can cope with anything. We can deal with anything effectively.
I love what you're saying there. Our job in life is to become more resilient.
Yeah.
Because that stuff never ends.
It's always going to be thrown at us. That's what life's about. That's what being human's about. And some of us get more of it thrown at us than others. I know some people, I can't believe how much they have to cope with every day. And I thank my lucky stars that I don't have to cope with that much. But each of us are coping with our own demons. And these things are inside us. And stress is basically negativity, our own negativity. Stress is the flight or fight response. And so it's a great system inbuilt since we were animals to protect us from danger. We see a saber-toothed tiger walk in the room. In an instant, we get all the stress chemicals surging through our body, which are designed to make us powerful physically to fight or run away. And that's a really great system. But we also have an imagination, which is also a really great system. So what that means is we don't need to see the saber-toothed tiger walking in the room. We can close our eyes and imagine a saber-toothed tiger walking in the room. We set off the flight or fight response again. So what we do instead, here we are, we're in Britain, we're in the 21st century. We don't have saber-toothed tigers running around. And actually, when was the last time anybody was actually in any real danger? We don't actually have a reason to set off the flight or fight response. So what we do instead is we worry and we feel guilty and we feel afraid and we feel angry and we just keep setting it off and we don't rest. We put other people first and we do all these things that are the enemy of good feelings and then wonder why we feel bad all the time.
It's interesting because imagination is actually quite a dangerous thing, because if you're afraid because the saber-toothed tiger is a real danger is there, great. I mean, that fear will serve you. But sometimes we make ourselves afraid because, fear, false expectations appearing real and all that stuff. And it will make it bigger. The snowball just gets bigger and bigger when it's actually not even happening.
Imagination is our worst enemy or our best friend. But we have to control it. We have to tell it what we want it to do. And so what happens is we don't rest. We don't dissipate the stress chemicals. And most people think they're relaxing by reading a book, listening to some music, watching television. But if you're in a stressed state, if you're in an anxious position, then those things are not enough to dissipate the stress chemicals. They're great for maintenance. But if you're still not down there where you should be, if your ambient stress level is still too high, then those things will never take you down. They'll never dissipate the stress chemicals.
Just forgets for a while. It's a temporary mechanism, but then you haven't really solved the root
You've not
cause.
solved the issue. It's still there. The stress chemicals are still controlling your mind and your body.
But do you find that, you've had a lot of experience working with people, including yourself. Do you find that people enjoy being in a stress mode? Do you find people have a benefit for being so stressful in their lives?
That's a dangerous road to go down.
I go down those dangerous roads. They call this brave business.
But yes, people enjoy it, and they would be the last person to admit it. You think back of me charging around for 20 years like a lunatic. My friends used to say to me, John, you're really stressed. And I'd say, no, I'm not. I'm just efficient. And I was just such a crazy man.
What did you enjoy? If you think about, put your coach hat on now, what were you enjoying by staying there?
I was enjoying being busy because if I had to stop, I had to feel. And there was stuff inside me I did not want to feel back then.
Right.
So I created it subconsciously to stop myself feeling, which was why when anything did slow me down or stop me, I got too close to those feelings, didn't I? So that made me freak out and get angry and shout and swear and make a big scene.
Interesting. Yeah, I did a lot of work with women as well, parents or business people. And yeah, there's a lot of things people enjoy. For instance, if you're always stressed, if you're always in trouble, if you're always challenged in your life, you get hugs. You get warm, cozy hugs from
Sympathy.
people. You get sympathy, you get love. And you're afraid that if you let go of that and you become an independent, strong person, then you no longer have love. Or it could actually turn a different kind of love.
Can I tell you a story about
Absolutely.
how bad sympathy is? We used to, when our children were younger, our bedroom was a safe place. That if we were in bed, the children would come and sit at the end of the bed, and that was where we would talk and have open and honest conversations. And our boy was maybe 11, maybe 12 years old. He was there, and he was very upset. He started speaking from the heart, which was very rare, and he started to cry. Now, if that happens for me, I have a lot of empathy for people. I don't have sympathy for people. So I can go to work, I can help them understand those feelings and deal with them and move on from them. My wife, who was sitting next to me, just jumped up immediately and went and hugged him. Now, I sat there and watched his pain go back down inside him because he was comforted by that hug. When we give sympathy, we don't do it to serve the person who's receiving it. We do it to relieve our own feelings and our own discomfort at the person in front of us who's in pain. So what people need is empathy, not sympathy. Sympathy is really dangerous and useless. And it holds us in the pain. It stops us moving forward. So empathy might be a bit more uncomfortable in the short term, but it's much more beneficial in the long term.
Yeah. Yeah. And how would an emphatic reaction look like versus what you said, give them a hug? That could be a sympathetic.
For me, that would mean accepting the feelings as they are. I talk about all feelings being valid. So it would be, okay, I understand how you feel. What's it teaching you? What are you gaining from it? What would you like to feel instead? And just an honest conversation about where they are. Rather than, oh, there. Because there is just blocking those feelings off and sending them, oh, I'll go back down again. It's creating a safe place for the feelings to be felt and acknowledged and expressed. Because once we do that, all the problems come from pushing those feelings down and not look at me and my temper and my busyness back then.
Yeah.
It was, oh, go away.
Go away. Or it just empowers them and says, yeah, I do need those hugs. I can't do it on my own. I do need those hugs. And I'm attached to those.
I used to, when I was working with someone, and if they're in pain, I would just hold their hand with a finger and a thumb on either side of their hand so they can feel the connection. There's a human connection there, but I'm not interfering with it's not a big hug and a hold tight. And it's just enough to let people know you're there, you're safe, everything's okay.
Yeah.
I've even done it with a finger on a knee in a session.
Yeah, you're not
Just to
alone.
you're not alone. You're here, but I'm not going to smother you. And it's important that you know that I want you to feel those feelings.
Yeah, it also depends on the role. You're playing the role of a coach. If you are in a role of a sympathy friend, yeah, I guess but just understanding that at that moment you are giving sympathy, and at that moment this is how that sympathy is received. Whereas if you are putting a role of a coach or an empowerer, that's not the reaction.
To move you to where you want to go, not to make you feel good for being here.
Nothing wrong with hugs, just different roles.
and the hug should come after the work.
Yeah.
It's a congratulations, well done. You've let that go. That's brilliant. Now you can have a hug.
Yeah. Ooh. I'll talk to my dog. The
hot
treat
stuff,
comes
isn't
after
it?
you sit
Yeah,
down.
there you go.
Anyway, we'll be back more with John Freeman, the Stress Buster, after this.
Across Bath, Chippenham, and Melksham, this is Radio Bath.
Welcome back to Brave Business Conversation. Still with John Freeman, still talking about stress busting. Any other advice that you would give for people? We talked a lot about starting with yourself.
So we're talking about dissipating stress chemicals, aren't we? Because that really, at the end of the day, is the only thing that matters. If you've got to jump out of the way of a truck, then you need the flight or fight. Otherwise, if you're just going about your life, focusing on getting your ambient stress level down as low as you can. And this could be as simple. It's all positive habits. So any of these things need to be done regularly. You can't do it once. You've got to do it all the time. So I love affirmations. So one of my favourite affirmations, 3-word affirmation, let it go. But repeat it over and let it go. Let it go. You feel tension in a part of your body, let it go. Let it go. You think a negative thought, let it go. Let it go. You can walk down the street saying this. You can sit in a chair saying it. It's just a wonderful, positive habit that to be doing all the time will just keep reminding your mind and body to let it go and be peaceful and start to notice that this stuff doesn't matter, that we get tearing around our head. Being busy is a really big thing nowadays. We're all so busy all the time. And we think we don't have time to do things. But stress busting actually creates more time because we start to recognize the addiction to stress, the addiction to being busy, and we start to make a choice and recognizing that's not as important as I thought it was. I can leave that. I can delegate that. So we don't have to be busy all the time. Let it go. Let it go.
But it's almost like being busy is an identity, isn't it? I'm a busy person, therefore I am successful.
That's right.
It is a way for you to put, to affirm yourself as a person. I like what you're saying about affirmations, and when you can get to that phrase, whether it's let it go for you or whether it's I'm good enough, whatever that one phrase affirmation, it's easier for you to remember because once you find out the root cause of why you're stressed, you can figure out that one or two, one phrase affirmation, and that kind of heals 88% of a lot of the stuff you go to because that is the root
as
cause.
we keep repeating it. The subconscious works on repetition. We've got to keep reminding the subconscious what we want, and that's where affirmations are amazing.
And you
And
carry
the
it with
secret
you.
to affirmations is keep them very short and keep them repetitive, but also you've got to get the feelings. You can't say, I'm relaxed, and feel tense while you're doing it, because it's all about the feelings. It's the tension that is winning the battle. The words, the affirmations, are merely a device to create feelings.
Yeah.
And if we can remember that, and I love, you see these affirmations people write, they're like 1,000,000 miles long. Absolute rubbish and
can't remember them.
You can't remember them. The only feeling you're feeling is boredom by the time you finish reading it. Keep your affirmations 3 words at the most, but even 1 word is even better.
Like you said, relax.
Relax or relaxed, and actually feel it when you say it. I love adjectives are my favourite part of the English language because we can create those feelings. We can't say these words with meaning without feeling the word. So relaxed, feel the feelings. And do that often. And use it as a reminder. Oh, this is what I'm supposed to be feeling.
This is what really matters, right? This is also about some things. I think mine is, does it really matter? Does it really matter? Because, when you want things to be right all the time and everything, does it really matter? In the bigger picture, is this really important? And it gives me, no,
And
it
what
actually
you're really
doesn't.
saying there is let it go.
Let it go, exactly. Let go of that need to be right. Yeah. Let go of that need to be seen.
Because the only true need is to be calm and relaxed. Anything else you're trying for in life, and I like working with ambitious people because they do what I tell them to do, basically. And they're action takers. They want to take the action to change. They're willing to move forward. But whatever you're trying to achieve in life, if it's costing you stress, it's not worth having. Because at the end of the day, we don't want stress in our lives, in our minds, in our bodies. It spoils everything. Stress is the enemy of all good things.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get one more tip out of you before we go. But before that, let's relax with a bit of music. Again, the last show of the year. We're having faith in ourselves to get over our stress or to thrive, amidst all the uncertainty. It's about going back to self, isn't it, John?
Coming home.
Coming home. I love that.
Time.
Coming home to yourself.
Every time. Stop being frightened of how we feel. Those feelings are valid. It doesn't matter what they are. And if we suppress them, then that's going to come out as stress. It's going to come out as our compulsions. And we're going to be unhappy. So uncomfortable for the short term, but very, very beneficial in the long term. We need to get used to sitting, being still, coming home, being with ourselves.
Yeah.
Because wherever we go, there we are.
Yeah.
Always
What's
with
the common
ourselves.
denominator here?
We cannot escape ourselves, so we might as well learn how to feel those feelings and embrace them. And the real magic is those horrible negative feelings that we spend our lives running away from can take seconds, minutes to leave us when we stop running away from them. The moment we accept them and say, oh yes, I feel that, boom, it's gone. And we can't pretend, we have to genuinely accept them as part of us. And they'll go. It's only our resistance that makes them hold on.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to accept that as part of ourselves.
And it's coming back, and that's why we call this the brave conversations. It's because it is about being brave. Lots of people make decisions in their life out of their fear zone. You know, they afraid, what will people think about me if I'm vulnerable? What will people think about me if I cry my feelings? All this fear is actually very stressful to live in fear.
Very, very
and
stressful.
taking that brave conversations with yourself first. It's like, what's causing this?
Yeah.
How am I creating this life for myself? And really, at least, you don't have to tell people yet. Just be brave towards yourself.
And we don't have to do it all day. And you know, come home 10 minutes so that you begin to get used to being with yourself. Be still, be quiet. And then do it again in 5-6 hours' time.
I love that, be still, because people are afraid to be still sometimes. They just talk, thinking that is how they're going to feel more confident. But it's actually in those quiet moments when you're understanding yourself, you're kind of feeling it. Sometimes when I work with people, when you feel that stress, where is it in your body? Does your heart flutter? Yeah. Is it in your neck? Does your arms? Where is it? And just identifying that, because it's the same place again and again and again. Everybody's got a different place, but once you find your place, you know yourself, and it manifests itself physically, doesn't it? Yeah.
And as you get better at this, as your stress levels start to come down, you can become more in touch with how you feel. You can start asking yourself, how do I feel when you walk in a room, when you're with certain people?
Yeah.
You know, how much of our stress is caused by being with family members, people, friends, who are actually really bad for us.
Exactly.
And they create stress in us. Well, as we become more aware, we can start making positive choices. And if we still have to be with those people, then we can defend ourselves beforehand and protect ourselves and be ready for it.
Exactly. Well, how do people get in touch with you, John? Because you've given them some really great insights.
You can find me I'm very active on Facebook. Look for John Freeman Stress Buster. I'm on Instagram, Stress Free John. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. Look for the Stress Buster.
John the Free Man.
John the Free Man. Freeman in name,
Freeman in nature, not in service. Okay.
Thank you.
Giving you free slogans here. But anyway, great to have you on the show.
If anybody wants to talk to me, I'll talk to anybody anytime. So.
Absolutely. I can feel that abundance in you. So thank you so much for making your time
Cynthia.
on this Christmas
really
holiday.